The movie begins with a young boy running out of a dark room with a mask on. He plays with his mom outside in the snow. More brief family images are shown as they are being recorded. The year is 1966 in May. The boy gets called by someone and goes to the washroom, where he opens the cabinet. Inside the cabinet is a floor door that he also opens. Strangely, his mother is in there, telling him she is starving. Hence he gets her an apple. She asks if her friend can have a snack too. The boy's father tells him to be careful. While he's not looking at her, his mom grabs him. We don't see what she did to him, but we see the boy's dad coming to him, lying lifelessly on the floor. We observe a man carrying 2 suitcases as he traverses a rather long distance on foot. The time is now much later, January 1987. The man is Apollo, who eventually arrives at a house to meet a man named Harold. He learns Apollo walked all the way to his house and likes his motivated attitude. Inside, Apollo is offered food which he politely rejects. Harold pays him $400 for the work he is about to do. It was big money at that time. Harold asks him how much he knows about the former's case. Apollo doesn't know too much. He knows the case involves Harold's last wife. The next scene has Harold getting prepared for getting recorded. He sits on a chair with 2 big lights beaming at him. Once the filming starts, he tells his viewers they may recognize him from a scandal that took place in this house many years ago. He says everyone seems to think he's a life-taker. He claims to have been hiding something all these years. Harold knows who is responsible for the demise of his wife and son. He intends to share every detail with the viewers. So they enter the basement, showing a certain spot. He says it is where he found his wife. He was miles away when something happened to her. The moment he found her, he thought she was literally scared lifeless. Her arm and calf were dismembered. The coroner found bite marks all over her, which did not match Harold's dental records. Apollo asks him how he felt about all this. Not answering him, Harold says the police had no understanding of what he had to endure. Afterward, he says he has something special to show to Apollo. They go back upstairs, where Harold shows him photos he took of wildlife. He apologizes for his behavior and blames it on him not getting many visitors. Soon, they hear laughter outside, prompting them to go to the window. They see the neighborhood kids standing nearby, covering their faces. Harold informs his guest the kids believe a witch lives in this house. He advises Apollo to always be mindful of his story. If he doesn't tell it correctly, the world will tell it for him. They witness a woman scaring the kids away. Harold says she is his second wife, Dolores. Since Harold says he does not think they will get everything filmed in the time they have today, Apollo replies he could come back on another day. But Harold proposes that he stay the entire day and he will drive Apollo to the train station. Because of the man's hesitation, Harold says he will triple his pay. Thus Apollo accepts. While he's alone, he watches what he recorded in the basement. He finds something that looks like a person, making him adjust the brightness to be certain of it. Once he increases it, he sees someone in the distance. Harold calls him to show Apollo something he says the police never saw. He shows him none other than his perishing wife on an old camera. Concerned, Apollo asks why would he film this. Not answering him again, Harold says it is fascinating how she feeds, yet his guest doesn't want to see this. He sees gruesome things and feels sick watching it. Harold just laughs before Apollo says he has to leave. He adds Harold could keep his money. Alas, the man collapses, not getting a chance to even leave the room. In the next scene, the camera turns on to show a restrained Apollo. Dolores joins them, and her husband says she knows what to do. He wants to know why Apollo stayed for the amount of time he did. Was it for money or curiosity? Of course, Apollo is more concerned with why Harold is doing this. Harold speaks to the camera that he was chosen by an unspecified her. He tells a future viewer if they are watching this, it means they are his successor. The woman he was talking about calls herself Beezel, and she lived in this house long before him. Apollo yells for help. Harold continues that Beezel feeds on the flesh of the living. Every 300 years, she births a child. Harold says he has made a lot of sacrifices in his life, but if one chooses to let her in, there is no pain or regret. There is only power. The responsibility will fall on his viewer to keep her fed. Harold says he never captured a live feeding successfully. When Beezel took his first wife, she feasted for days. At first, it was hard for him to watch it happen. However, he now has a wife with a shared purpose. Soon he closes his eyes and holds out his hands. Reopening his eyes, he looks at Apollo, speaking in a scarier voice. He says he can already taste him. It seems like he might be possessed. Lucky for Apollo, he has a tool he uses to stab Harold in the neck. This gets the wicked man on the floor. Unfortunately, this still isn't a victory for Apollo due to him being restrained to the chair. He sees someone behind the camera in the darkness. It happens to be Beezel, who draws near to rip his head off. All of it is recorded. Dolores seems to have witnessed everything and goes upstairs without providing any kind of help to her husband. We jump another sizable amount of time into the future. It is November 2003. A young lady arrives at home. Once she's inside, she calls out to Dolores. The arrival is Naomi, a caretaker nurse who is there to replace the previous one named Charlotte. She hears a sound in another room, causing her to go there. She enters a room and turns on the lamp, which gets her a scream from a woman in bed. Therefore, Naomi turns the lamp off to instead light a candle. As she lights more, she says she is sorry about Charlotte. She can't believe she would abandon this woman, who is Dolores. Naomi says she will be her new caretaker. She promises she won't vanish. She brings a simple dinner for the elderly woman, but she does not want to eat it. Naomi uses a stethoscope on her. She accidentally drops the spoon and finds a recorder under the bed while retrieving it. She assures Dolores she will check on her throughout the night. Naomi hears a sound coming from the basement room as she walks past it, so she decides to walk inside. She calls out if anyone is in there. No one answers. She descends to the bottom, and an unsettling situation is made more unsettling due to the light switch not working. Hearing wicked laughter from above, she rushes back to Dolores. The woman says an unspecified "it" will happen again. In a sad voice, she says she didn't know. She adds she didn't know what a certain she was. She utters the name Beezel. Shifting to a scarier voice, Dolores says first, "It was Linda. Charlotte." Yet that is not enough. She keeps repeating for Beezel to be fed. Needless to say, this worries Naomi. When she's alone, she plays the recorder she found. Charlotte talks, saying it is her 9th day caring for Dolores. She says something strange is happening to her patient. Roughly 1 month ago, she had a stroke. The doctor said she would never walk or speak again. However, she began to talk in her sleep and was saying terrifying things. She was talking about hurting Linda, the nurse who preceded her. Charlotte also says she has an odd feeling in this house that someone is watching her. Naomi skips to another section on the recorder that has Dolores saying she won't do something. She says one is enough, and that something is cold. The scariest thing Naomi catches is a different voice saying to take Charlotte's life. With that, she leaves the recorder near Dolores while sitting beside her. She dozes off, and upon awakening, she sees the frightful sight of Dolores being very close to her, looking grotesque. Thankfully, this was a nightmare. Moving along, Naomi listens to more of the recorder in private. Dolores tells Beezel she has had enough, but Beezel says just one more. Chillingly, Beezel greets Naomi from the recorder. Before she has time to process this, a light shines behind her through the window. She checks what is outside and the light turns off. At another window, she sees a strange being standing near the window of the house in front. Once the light turns off and back on, the being vanishes. The light turns off again. It turning back on gives Naomi a jump scare of Dolores' face being close to the window. This makes her rush out of the house to see if Dolores is truly outside. Yet no one is out there. She returns inside, hearing someone calling out for help. Hence, she looks down into the basement. She calls out to Dolores and says she's coming to help her. She searches the basement, finding Charlotte's nurse ID card hanging. Linda's ID card also hangs there. This is an unusually frightening discovery for Naomi. At this moment, someone runs behind her. She is very scared, approaching a door near the stairs. She opens it to find none other than Charlotte lying in the distance. Naomi yells she is going to get her out. Since the space is small, she has to crawl in there. She comes to Charlotte and sees she has a bloody face. What's much worse is that the grotesque Beezel is there to inject Naomi with serious fear. Dolores peeks into the room prior to closing the door on all of them. Naomi screams in fear. We hear her knocking on the door because Dolores locked it. With that horrid fate for the new nurse, we travel a decade into the future. In February 2013, another young lady named Nova opens this same door and records what is inside. She says 10 years ago, this is where her mother-in-law took the lives of 3 nurses. Now no one wants to buy this house. Hearing unsettling sounds in this dark room, Nova closes the door out of fear. Outside, she films her husband, Lucas. They spend some time behind the camera, seeming happy together. Inside, he complains about there being no internet in this house. He is forced to use the yellow pages to find food for him to order. After he does, Nova says they should have a baby, an idea he objects to. As she films herself in the bedroom, we see Beezel at the doorway. Soon Lucas joins her on the bed and says he's sorry. He adds it is weird for him to be in this house. He has only seen photos of it. She asks if he ever met Harold, to which he answers he did not. Lucas thinks the man is a psycho. He believes if his mom never met him, she would still be alive. He says somehow Harold convinced her that a witch lived in the basement. When their food arrives, the delivery man instantly runs back to his car to drive away quickly. He knows the history of the house he delivered to. While Nova continues to film everything, Lucas asks her who is going to watch this. They and their kids are the reply he gets. She wants to remember this, but he does not. He learns she is not scared of being in this house. According to him, every normal person should be. He gets upset, so he leaves. On the next day, a bird startles Nova by flying into the window during her shower. She looks at herself in the mirror and hears a sound coming from the cabinet. Once she turns to look at it, we see her reflection doesn't move. She opens the cabinet and the floor door inside of it, like Harold's son did decades ago. She shines a flashlight in there, but Lucas interrupts her from looking further. He puts up a for sale sign for the house. In the bedroom, Nova enters to show him one of his mom's dresses she decided to wear. She wants to keep the house, yet he doesn't. He does not want to live in his deceased mother's house. She says this is a perfect place to raise a family, and he declares they are not having kids. At night, she awakens due to strange sounds. She holds her camera under the bed to record what is there. It shows her some movement. Thus she gets on the floor to see someone's gray lower legs under the bed. However, she scarily sees nothing when she looks above the bed. Looking back down, she observes how the legs walk to get on top of the bed. She sees the person who got on is another her, who is engaging in intimacy with Lucas. They both look at her with distorted eyes, and she awakens from this nightmare. Nova sees she is alone in bed. The first thing she does is look at her camera. She sees something we don't, prompting her to cover her mouth in fear. Following this, she goes searching for Lucas. While she does, she hears a sound from the basement, hence she goes in there to inspect the area. She finds a camera there and hears the sound of a child crying. She opens the door near the stairs to discover a crying baby near her. Taking the baby, she tries to comfort it. Soon Lucas enters the basement to see her sitting on the stairs. Once she turns to look at him, we see she is actually holding a lifeless animal. He yells what is wrong with her before he throws away the animal in the trash outside. Nova is crying in bed, and he tries to comfort her. Moving along, he speaks firmly on the phone to someone, saying he will accept it even if the price of the house goes down by 20%. Returning home, he observes several knives lying on the floor. After he puts them back into the knife block, he turns around to see his wife standing behind him. He hugs and kisses the woman, who we should notice is starting to behave not like herself. Alone, Lucas looks through Nova's camera. One of the video thumbnails grabs his interest. Therefore, he watches the video, which is strangely the nightmare Nova had of the other her engaging in intimacy with him. He sees how they both turn to look at the viewer with white eyes. Of course, he closes the camera out of fear. We see Nova lying in bed with corrupted eyes. Lucas comes to her, and the lady's eyes return to normal. He demands to know what the video is that he just watched. Without looking at him, she says they were intimate last night. It is something he claims he would remember. Now looking at him, she says an unspecified she is going to be very pleased. Subsequently, he finds the old camera that Harold played for Apollo. It shows him his mother, Dolores, and Harold's first wife being deceased. When he sees Harold's son lying lifelessly near the washroom cabinet, he has to stop the camera out of fear. Nova enters the room, making him ask her where she got this stuff. From the basement, she replies. He says they need to leave this house immediately. Since she says she likes the house, he approaches her to say there is something wrong there. He holds her head to add that the house does something to people. He thinks it's doing something to her. Soon he gets phoned to learn they got an offer on the house. So he puts a sold sticker on the for sale sign. Returning to the house, he witnesses Nova vomiting in the washroom. During dinner, he sees her acting odd and gets upset. He asks if there is something she wants to tell him. She does not, but he does. He reveals they will leave for Paris tomorrow. Wanting to celebrate, she goes under the table to give him a surprise. He quickly discovers it is a very painful one that causes him to scream in pain. Thankfully, it was a nightmare. The first thing he does is he checks to see if his member is still there. He whispers to his wife if she is awake. He says he had the weirdest dream, and it is scary that she asks him if it felt good. She turns around to ask the same question loudly, making him wake up again. Lucas sees her camera on the table, recording him. Once he turns around, it is over for him. The transformed Nova gives the man his last day. Later, she records herself near a mirror and touches her stomach, which looks pregnant. At a different time, we see her lying deceased in the basement while a baby cries close by. Beezel is there, with her grotesque back turned to us. The final scene has a family arriving at the house. They exit their car to start moving into the ominous place that they will soon wish they had not.